Mario & Luigi Brothership is the 6th installment in the long-running Mario & Luigi RPG series. It's a big shake-up with it being the first game to be in not only 3D with the jump from models to sprites from previous entries, but it's also the first HD entry on a home console. It's been a very long time since we've seen this series. If you don't count remakes, it's been nearly 10 years since the last mainline game. Going into this game, I was a little cautious at first. Could they really pull off an entry after so long with having to update and also adapt the series with a jump to 3D and HD, a transition some games have struggled with previously? And on top of all that, the previous developers Alpha Dream, who are responsible for creating this series and were an incredibly talented studio being comprised of ex-Square Enix members, went bankrupt back in 2019. So it goes without saying, but this new studio had a lot to live up to in the eyes of fans' expectations, and times changing with this new release. The studio responsible for Brothership is Acquired. They are not really known for their previous games, with their most well-known effort being co-developing the Octopath Traveler series. Could they really make a game worth the 10-year wait? With all that out of the way, let's find out if Brothership is a worthy release in this beloved series.
Luigi!
Starting off with the story, Brothership is a soft reboot in a sense, having mechanics reintroduced to the player. The story has the brothers alongside other members of the Mushroom Kingdom being swept away into the parallel world of Concordia, which was once an island surrounded by this uni tree. But now, with the tree being destroyed and the lands now separated into islands, you team up with Kona, one of this world's inhabitants, and your new companion Snoutlet to restore these islands by reconnecting this fractured world and plugging them together to your main horde on Shipshape Island. It's very satisfying uniting each island, since you also reunite the inhabitants and over time see your main base become more populated, adding new facilities and side quests. On top of that, you'll also open up new sections of previous locations that you've explored, which incentivizes backtracking. Without going into too much detail to avoid spoilers, the main themes of this game's story is about the bonds between people and the different kinds of connections between one another that people have. It's nothing too deep, but I liked how in the literal sense you're uniting not only lands but characters by helping them out with their issues with one another. Each chapter will focus on the different kinds of bonds, be it family, friends or lovers. I ended up liking the story overall to this game. It takes a little to get going, but once you're in the flow of connecting islands and meeting different characters, the game's pacing is smooth and always moving forward. Sure, there may be some moments that aren't for you, but each island offers something unique. Sometimes you'll be solving puzzles or investigating riddles, and other times it'll lean more into traditional Mario & Luigi gameplay with platforming and combat sections. I really like the island structure since it allows the developers to explore different ideas without them overstaying their welcome. If you don't like a certain island's gimmick, it won't be long until you're moving on to the next. Each island also has some nice visual diversity and look incredible running on the Switch. One last note for the story is the villains, them being known as the Extension Corps, with the main leader being Socket. They were very light-hearted, mainly just showing up to stop whatever it is you're doing throughout your adventure. I wasn't too taken by them like previous enemies in the RPG games, but I found them fun enough, and finding out what they're trying to achieve by separating everyone is a nice parallel to what your main objective is. So overall, I was pleased with this story. There is a good bit of backtracking to islands you've already been to, but as stated, this game spices things up upon revisits. Moving on to the gameplay, I was originally worried that traditional dungeons from previous games were going to be cut given the designs of the islands, but I can happily report that they do return at the end of each chapter with these lighthouse sections. These parts were great and are some of my favourite moments in the whole game. You'll be solving puzzles using the bros moves, you'll be transforming into a UFO to reach far off sections, or as a ball to fit into tight areas. Luigi has also had a huge overhaul in Brothership. In particular, his AI, which was controlled by the player in previous games, now acts independently. Think like a Pikmin or the Ice Climbers in Super Smash Bros. He can still be somewhat moved with the B button, however now you more or less command him to do different actions. At first I was a bit worried about this since I thought it was going to make the game more casual and kinda play itself with it being more automated. But when thinking about this change, it made a ton of sense since the game is now in 3D, environments are much bigger and the game in general moves at a much faster pace. Maybe they playtested how his AI acted before and came to the conclusion that with the 3D environments it wasn't possible to move the two brothers around like in previous games. I quickly ended up liking this change. It allows for the two to be split up much more than before, with puzzles and mechanics taking advantage of this. Luigi will flip switches where you're controlling him with the B button or hide in a barrel to distract guards in stealth sections. I can understand if diehard fans might not like this change, but personally I found myself preferring it and like the new additions it introduced. Luigi in general is amazing in this game. There's this new mechanic called Luigi logic which can trigger at any time and is usually used as a means to introduce a new gameplay style like the bros moves or how to progress the story. The year of Luigi is never truly over. This mode is also featured in the battles for this game, which is by far the best aspect of Brothership. Acquire absolutely knocked it out of the park with the battle system in this game. The Mario & Luigi series has some of the best combat in the genre, with the biggest shake-up being how every attack is reaction based. If you are a good enough player, you can get through all these games without taking any damage. It can be all dodged in theory. Unlike a Mega 10 game or any traditional turn-based combat where you fear the RNG and getting critted, in Mario & Luigi you can simply jump over attacks or throw damage back at your opponent. Every enemy type has a unique attack string that you'll have to learn the timing to in order to avoid taking damage. I really can't gush enough about the combat in this game. You have your basic means of dealing damage with jump attacks alongside hammer attacks, which now has each brother show a unique animation. Unlike previous games, they also team up to deal more damage. Of course, on top of all that, you have the staple mechanic being bros attacks. At the cost of BP, a thing like mana or MP, you can unleash these incredible screen wiping moves. Some are single damage attacks, but most of them will hit every enemy. Each will have you play these short mini games which will determine how much damage you will deal. My favourite bros move in particular was this vortex ability for Luigi. You control this huge tornado and just shred everything in your path. It's incredibly satisfying to pull off. The animations in these attacks go above and beyond in making every hit feel satisfying. Acquire really paid close attention to the source material of this series. I'm shocked at how well they managed to pull this off, even more so when you consider this their first attempt. Not only that, but they managed to translate these animations into 3D so perfectly. I'm not well versed in animation, but I can tell that this was not easy to pull off, especially when you consider the performance of the Nintendo Switch. The boss fights on display here are really fun, testing your limits as the player. As a result of the unique combat system, you never feel overpowered and mistakes feel your own and not at the mercy of some arbitrary level up system. The Luigi logic mechanic is also featured in boss fights. They're a unique way to make each fight feel unique with one-time attacks that only show up here. Some of the later fights got really challenging and I actually died a few times. I'm glad that the series is still as difficult as it usually is and hasn't leaned into toning down this aspect. There is also two new additions to battles in Brothership. The first one complements battling nicely. You have these plugs you can collect and use them as passive buffs in battles, think like the badges in the Paper Mario games. What effects they have can range from many different things. For instance, one has you get in a duplicate item you used in battle, and some have you deal more damage to specific enemy types. The plugs are a great addition to the series and further strategy and going for specific builds. The second new ability I'm personally not a big fan of, but that is the block button. It's good for newcomers and I can respect that you can completely ignore it, which is what I did outside of this example here. But what I hate about its inclusion is that using it kind of encourages playing this game like a traditional RPG, which whilst I love those more traditional games, isn't simply what Mario & Luigi is. A harmless addition, but overall I can't say I like its inclusion. I mentioned earlier, but the animations outside the battles in this game are very nice. I love the new art style for this series. It reminded me a lot of manga art with the character expressions. There's a surprising amount of cutscenes in this game and they all look great with this art style that uses vibrant shell shaded visuals. Although I will say the citizens of Concordia are not the main cast members but the generic NPCs all have very similar designs. Since you only ever interact with the one race, there isn't as many diverse character designs like in previous Mario RPGs. I do like the main cast plug designs having the outlet sockets as eyes, which is a cool idea. It can take some getting used to seeing previous Mario characters in this art style, but like the paper games, it's all a part of the charm of the spin-off's world. A few miscellaneous points that I'd like to bring up is with the user experience. Brothership may be a little hand-holding at times, but considering the demographic for these games, I don't mind it and prefer it to the alternative of getting lost, especially with the amount of backtracking in this game. The quality of life features here are very useful. You have a gold pipe that will teleport you to different islands at a moment's notice. You can accept as many side quests as you want, with some being time gated. The side quests add a good bit of world building to this game. I think a certain review outlet may have skipped over a lot of the side quests in this game. Similar to the Trail series, these add a ton of optional lore to the world of Concordia. They aren't just locked behind generic NPCs but also the main cast. Some are just simple fun, but other times I found a lot of backstory for characters like Coney in particular to be locked behind side quests. I don't think this is a bad approach since it allows for players who just want to push through the main story and battle to carry on, whereas players who want a little extra lore can be rewarded by these moments. I also liked how side quests were introduced. You have a course to your destination that Shipshape Island follows, and during downtime between expeditions you can freely travel around doing stuff like grinding or side quests. Later on, you do unlock a faster way to move around the map, so you aren't stuck with the slow navigation for long. One last point I have on the game is with the music. I'm a huge fan of the previous composer for this series, Yoko Shimomura. Her contributions to gaming can't be understated. With her not making the music for Brothership, I was worried at first, but the tracks here feel very on brand with the same energy that the series is known for. Once again, Acquire really did their research on previous games. My only complaint is I wish we had more battle and boss themes. A good example of this done right is in the modern Paper Mario games where they have different battle themes for new areas. Overall, from start to finish, Brothership had me hooked with its amazing combat and cast of characters. I can safely say that after finishing this surprisingly lengthy journey that this game is currently my favourite in the series and will consider it the best entry yet. Even on a more objective level, the combat alone in this game is enough to win me over from previous installments. Okay, now this is going to be a little different, but I want to address some aspects from this game's legacy that I'm worried about. Everyone in the Nintendo space already knows about that one IGN review, and whilst I don't want to hark on it too much since a lot of outlets already have, I do want to say my opinions on it.
The Switch has been home to many triumphant revivals for Nintendo, but the Mario and Luigi series has sadly missed the boat. Bruh.
IGN are known for having much say in the gaming sphere. After watching this review and finishing Brothership for myself, I can't help but feel like we play two completely different games here.
Which suffers from surprisingly bad performance issues nearly the entire time.
He hulks about the game's performance, and honestly I have no idea what he's talking about. I could maybe see your point if you're referring to the amount of loading times this game has. They are very frequent given the amount of islands you visit and the Switch's lack of an SSD for loading areas in the background of gameplay like with the PS5. But the reviewer is talking about the frame rate. I honestly can't see what he's going on about here. The game mostly ran smooth and I feel like he's just nitpicking here for the sake of it.
The tutorials and dialogue are constantly holding your hand.
A few other points he brings up is the hand holding, which he even acknowledges is something to be expected given it's a Mario and Luigi game designed for both casuals and fans alike. There's a strange reviewing habit I see a lot of journalists do where they freak out whenever a game takes control away from them for even a second and consider it awful. I mentioned it before in my Mega Man Legends video, but player freedom isn't always a good thing, especially when the game requires you to backtrack, which can throw off a lot of players. He also mentions how the game is only 34 hours long. I just gotta say that they must have been skipping through everything, since I know I'm not the fastest gamer, but the runtime for me personally hit 50 hours. Even how long to beat list this game is longer than that. I understand that outlets have a short amount of time to get reviews out with early copies before the game drops to maximize viewers, but it doesn't excuse this review in my opinion. Finally, on this whole topic, I just want to say that I hope this 5 out of 10 isn't going to shake any nest over at Nintendo. This review has done way more to the public's perception of this game than any marketing or word of mouth. People who aren't even familiar with this series know about this one review because of how low the score is. I'll just show a bunch of games on screen that IGN said were better than Brothership during this rant section to further show how messed up this all is. The reputation that this game has garnered goes beyond this community to the mainstream gaming audience. Unfortunately, in this day and age, people listen to numbers way more than words. Even watching this review, at no point does it feel like they're gonna drop a 5 out of 10 until the very end. Even for the points being made here, the score is way too low to justify it all. There is a huge difference between saying that a game is bad and that saying that a game is not for you, something that more reviewers should consider before they tarnish the series' reputation. I just hope that Nintendo doesn't see this IGN review and think that this aligns with the majority of Mario and Luigi fans. Also, during the making of this video, Nintendo sent out questionnaire emails to fans asking what they think of Brothership, mainly asking for feedback, and I think that this was because of IGN's stupid review. I also just feel bad for Acquire. They brought their A game here, going from a not so well known development team into making a Nintendo licensed game. I can only hope the best for them, given how unfortunately negativity is very popular in gaming discussions over doing something right, which I hope my review has demonstrated they are actually very talented developers. I hope they stick around and maybe even one day Nintendo will buy the rights and acquire. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Sorry things got ranted. I just wanted to find a healthy outlet to vent my anger towards IGN. But what did you think about Brothership? I'm curious. Also, any feedback on this video would be appreciated. Thanks for watching and have a nice rest of your day.